Hey everyone, it's Wendy Hutchinson with The Path of Me. I am very excited to introduce my next guest. Her name is Christie Pierce. She's a writer. She has a blog called Lens to the Soul, and she has a beautiful journey she wanted to share with us. As you know, this podcast features people overcoming adversity, having the courage to step into their power and purpose. So, without further ado, welcome, Christie. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Wendy. It's good to be here.
I wanted to, yeah, first of all, your story has been so fascinating to me. You've had so many pivot points and really kind of nexus points on your journey to get you here. But I first wanted to touch on the fact that you were adopted into a family of five. So I wanted you to share a little bit about what that was like. Um, and how old were you when that took place?
I was actually 5 days old. It was already pre-planned. The woman that gave birth to me, she had already signed all the paperwork. She knew she was going to give me away to my adopted family. So 5 days old, boom, adopted into them. And it was interesting because I had three brothers and a sister. Two of them were already adopted, and then two were natural. So it was just kind of interesting. We grew up in Foxborough, of all places, before the Patriots were huge and Kraft owned it. So it was like a farm town. So I grew
Okay.
up on a farm. Mom and dad, just your you know, typical farmland. It wasn't, not a lot of business. So it was like very like Route One. I don't know if anyone's familiar with it, but like Route One wasn't busy at all. It was just a lot of cows, sheep, goats. So it was just your typical, we used to call it Mayberry High. So
Wow. And
yeah.
after you went through high school, where did you go to college or what did you?
No, I actually didn't, but I was an exchange student in high school and I ended up in France as an exchange student. So that was like my first taste of traveling. So I loved to travel from then on out. I was loving travel. So started traveling very early and didn't want to really stay in Foxborough after that. So after high school, I dabbled in hairdressing and a few other things. And then when I was 24, I left and took off to Florida.
Did you have friends there or did you just decide you wanted to change and packed your car and drove away? How did that work?
Well, I had one of my best friends from high school had moved down there, and there was a few others that had lived in Florida. So I went down for, I think it was like Labor Day weekend. I went down there and, I was in my 20s. So we kind of partied, hung out. And I came back and I told my mom and dad, guess what? I'm quitting this was my first corporate job, quitting my corporate job and I'm taking off.
Did they
And
freak
my
out?
mom, sorry.
Did they freak out?
Well, at the time I had an apartment, corporate job, was doing that whole nice thing. And then my mom and dad looked at me and said, you're doing what? And I said, I'm quitting my job and I'm leaving and I'm going to Florida. So my mom wasn't overly happy, but my father was like, excellent. And he kind of said to me, took me outside in the driveway and said, hey, shoot for the stars. If you hit the sky, you're going to be okay.
Oh
And
my gosh.
I
Awesome.
literally packed my shit and moved to, of all places, Daytona Beach, Florida.
Oh my
So,
gosh, really?
yeah. So I moved down there and I moved in, it was like, I think it was like September, October, and moved in with my best friend from high school. And then the shit hit the fan that year. It was like the end of that year, my father got very sick. And in January of 95, he died.
Wow. That must have been
So
hard to be so far away during that time where he was ill and did
he
you?
was he was only ill for a month, literally. My brother and sister
Wow.
came down to visit me, and my older brother has diabetes. So he got sick literally the night he arrived. He's got diabetes. So he became DKA, they call it diabetic ketoacidosis. He ended up in the ICU at Daytona Beach, and my father ended up in ICU in a hospital in
That's a
Boston.
really interesting synchronicity.
It was kind of messed up because with my brother in the hospital in Daytona, he had to sign himself out to get back to Boston with me. My sister left and went back to Boston. And then by the time we got back, my father was already in a medical coma. So he
It's
was,
been so hard for you. You were
yeah,
so young, like 25 or something.
I was 25 and I
Wow.
never got to speak to him again. So he passed away January 29th of
Did you
1995.
feel like, how did you process that? I think grief is something that only recently we've gotten better at processing and talking about loss in a healthy way. That must have been really hard to be home, experience that, and then you go back down to Florida, like away from everyone. And
Yeah. I think my family thought that I would stay home, but I didn't. I went back and well, I had a job. I had a corporate job down there.
Right.
So I went back to Florida and I'll be honest with you, I didn't cope. I drank a lot, a lot. And
A lot of people turn to alcohol because the feelings and emotions are so strong. You just want to numb it, you know?
yeah, I numbed it. Okay. I numbed it pretty much, Sunday through Sunday. It was devastating. He was literally the man of my life. He was everything to me. So it was very hard. I became angry too. I was very angry. I sunk everything into my work. I was a sales rep at the time, and then I became a sales manager. So I pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed, and I became incredibly successful. But I kind of wouldn't let too many people near me. I
A lot of pain unprocessed in there that needed to come out eventually, I guess.
yeah, I was angry with him too. I was angry that he left. I was like, how could you kind of do this to me? So
A lot of
yeah,
people relate to that feeling of abandonment, like,
yeah,
I need you and you're not here. How dare you leave
yeah.
me like this? I
And I
know
think,
I was going to say my mom lost her mom and dad within 6 months when she was 28. So she had a lot of emotions around that at the time.
yeah, yeah, it's a lot. And my whole family was up north. I was down south. So it was hard. I didn't go, I don't even think I went home for a couple of years. I just couldn't even deal with it. Um, but on the flip side, I became very successful. But it was just I just became very reckless and you know dating and I didn't want boyfriends. It was just I just didn't want people near me because I
Yeah.
just felt abandoned. And I think couple that with being adopted, so it was like I had lost, in the back of my head I was thinking, they didn't want me. I lost my dad, and I don't know, I just became a basic shit show, a functioning shit show, but
Yeah.
nevertheless a shit show.
I think we have to be so careful of the stories we tell
Yeah.
because we talked a little bit about this before we
Yeah.
got on the show, but we allow the stories we tell to define who we are.
Mm.
Then we start to kind of manifest experiences that validate our story.
Oh,
So you start to date people who are unattached and do abandon you, or that it doesn't work out, or like in my case, I was um, always seeking or chasing worthiness. So I was never enough, but I would constantly interact with people who would validate that I was not enough, or that you know what I mean? It's like
oh yeah.
this core belief is how we respond to the world. And then the experience comes back that validates it. And you're like, see, there you go. I'm always abandoned, or I'm always unseen and taken advantage of and unworthy of love, or
Mm.
whatever it is, right? It's like the story. And then we're so in it, we're so deep in the program of it that we can't even see it. It's just like, I can't believe this just keeps happening to me, and you don't, You don't realize that you have the power to change it because we don't even know we're in it. It's just normal, right?
It goes with that saying of like, well, what happens next? What could possibly happen next? And then boom, it happens. Yeah. And then, yeah, you go out and you just attract that man that, is just the wrong person at the right time.
Right.
And it just happens. It's that perpetual cycle. And, for so long, I blamed them. It was always like, I put the blame on them. Like, well, you did this to me, you did this to me. But then in the same respect, it was like, I was attracting it.
Right.
And then I was putting up with it.
right. We keep choosing it over and over, right? And the thing that shocked me on my own journey was like the realization that I can remember the day, like I was in therapy, and I remember the day I realized that I was the problem. I was like, what?
Am
Like,
I the drama?
like a ton of bricks. I mean, I had been in therapy for a while. It was just like not new to her. I mean, she had notebooks of like perfectionist issues. I mean, her notebooks were full, right? Like this
Yeah.
girl. Oh, it took me a long time. And then I remember that moment. Like you have these aha moments and realizations about yourself, and you're
Oh,
like,
yeah.
oh my God, I'm the problem.
Mhm.
I'm the problem here. It's not my family. It's not my kids, not my parents. I'm the problem. Oh my God, that was just, I've had several of those moments in my life, and it just makes you just like take a deep breath and be like, wow, how do I process this information? What was that moment like for you? Because clearly you've been on this path of awakening and reconnecting to your soul self. And what was that moment like for you when you were like, oh, wait a minute, I keep choosing the same profile of man or relationship?
I just can't even with that. Yes, I've had many times sitting on a couch, not lying down, but sitting on a couch with a therapist thinking, it's not me. It's not me. It's them. It's my parents. It's my brothers. It's my sister.
Your
It's this.
circumstance, right? Like I'm adopted. I
Yeah.
was abandoned. That's what it is.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It was always it's the pivotal moments. I remember sitting on dates, just going out with men. And that would be my intro of, okay, so this, and this. And they would kind of look at me like with their head cocked going, okay, this chick is like a fucking psycho. And then I'd never hear from them again and go, it's not me, it is them. And then I would say to like a girlfriend or something, like, I'm never going to do this again. Like, fuck dating. I'm done. And they would be like, no, Christie, you got to do it. You got to do it. And then I would take this hiatus from dating, and then I'd get bored or something. But it's just the last 6 months of my life have been the best and the worst, because that was like sitting in complete solitude, dancing with these demons in the dark and in the light, thinking it is me. It is me. Holy fuck, it is me.
Right?
And then like walking by mirrors going, I'm not looking at the mirror. I'm not looking at the mirror. And I just wanted to be right. I just wanted to put like things on the mirror because I didn't want to look at myself. It was
Wow.
dark night of the soul. Like,
Awesome.
I can't do this. And, having a broken ankle, sitting on the couch, sobbing, thinking,
You've had so many pivotal moments, but I'm going to dial it back.
you gotta.
You've had so many things. Like you had your mom pass in like 2016. I think whenever we have a parent transition, I haven't had the personal experience, but from what I've observed,
Yeah.
regardless of what your relationship is,
Yeah.
it's going to have an impact, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And for your family of five to lose
Mm-hmm.
both parents, that changes the whole dynamics of the family, and just so much happens, right? When you go through something like that.
Yeah, my mother's death. That was in April of 2016. That actually took a toll on our family altogether, because my mom actually, we've spoken about it many times, pretty much when my dad died, because they met, they got married, that's what they did back then. She'd never known any other love. So when he died, it was like she died.
Wow.
So she was just basically living. And my two brothers were her biological children. They I mean, the sun rose and set with them till my daughter came along, and then, the sun rose and set with my daughter Isabella. And it's strange because, I kind of knew that I knew my father loved me, but it was like there's always this divide between biological and adopted. And you always know it. My grandmother, I'll say it to this day, my grandmother always said my brothers were her favorite. They could do anything.
Wow.
Oh, she just put that shit out there. She was just that kind of,
Right? Like as a child, when they're getting all the favorite gifts, and then the other children are getting one or two things, or,
oh no, she just put that shit out there. That woman was, yeah, she would just say that they're my favorite.
Process. That's a lot of content for the therapist couch.
I had to do a lot of forgiving with her. God rest her soul. But so when my mother, right before she passed away, I had to work some shit through on her deathbed, literally, and forgive her. And even afterwards, it was just it was more like of a relief of, I don't have to like butt heads with her anymore. I don't have to prove anything, because I was constantly proving to her, like, look, mom, I bought a house. Look, mom, I'm successful. Look, mom, I'm a single mom.
The worthiness piece we were talking about, right? Where you're just looking and craving that validation or that worthiness, like piece from your parents. Like,
oh.
I mean, that was something that I recognized and had to confront in myself. It was really hard. And you're a single mom, so you hitting these markers as a single mom is like even more incredible, right? Mm-hmm. Gosh, life is just so rich, isn't it? With emotion and challenges and family and our jobs, and we're just being constantly bombarded and reflected all of our stuff constantly in life. And how we navigate that is so pivotal in the life that we create for ourselves. And it sounds like you started to travel like during COVID. Well, first of all, you have a stroke during COVID?
Oh.
Did that happen?
Yeah, well, yeah, the world kind of shut down, and we were working remote with my company. And yeah, so September 16th of 2020, my daughter had just left for school. Actually, she just went to college, and a few weeks later, I woke up, was totally fine, looking out my kitchen window, and all of a sudden things started going hazy and dark, and they said something's wrong. And yeah, I ended up having a stroke during COVID. And
did you call the ambulance?
nope, didn't have a chance. I actually made it out the door to my neighbor's house, and by the time I was banging on her door, all hell broke loose. And they actually thought I was having an aneurysm, a brain aneurysm. And I had never been so scared in my life. But I tell people, laying in the back of that ambulance, my whole body, I felt like it was cut in half. And I was just kind of looking up at the EMTs thinking, okay, what's going on? And they kind of tried to keep me relaxed. But I remember saying to myself, I'm not leaving this ambulance. Like, I'm not leaving. So I definitely feel like I'm not dying. So I knew I wasn't dying, but I just didn't know what was happening. So by the time we went to this major hospital in Rhode Island, and they all came rushing out, like it was like fucking Grey's Anatomy. And I thought, okay, there's some serious shit going down. And yeah, and I couldn't tell my daughter because she was at school, so I didn't know what was going on. They didn't know what was wrong yet. And then they literally came over and said, we're going to give you this drug, and if it goes wrong, your brain's going to bleed. But if it goes right, we're going to get you feeling. And I was just laying there on the stretcher, and
you can't talk, right? Probably.
Well, I was drooling, and it was just kind of bad. And I was just like, yeah, oh yeah, just give it to me. Like, fuck it, just do it. And yeah, it took like about 24 hours, and I was in the ICU on the stroke unit. And finally I was like, I have to call my daughter and delicately tell her what was going on. But she ended up coming in. They let her come in through, all the COVID protocols. She came in and was like, Mom, what the hell? And yeah, it was just kind of like,
gosh.
So yeah, that kind of changed my life. I kind of went a little euphoric, I say, because after it happened, I'm like, I'm going to live my life. Like, I'm going to start living. And a few months later, I was I was on Instagram, and I scrolled across this photographer out of South Africa who was doing a photo expedition in Iceland. And, he was explaining what was going to happen. And I'm a photographer, like an amateur photographer. I love photography. And he said, I'm going to Iceland and I'm going to do this thing in June. And something inside my soul, it just like burst out and was like, do it. Without even thinking, I DM this guy, don't even know him. I'm like, count me in, I'm doing it. Because he had like 2 spots available. I'm like, count me in, I'm doing it without even thinking. So I literally was like, sign me up, whatever. So he's like, okay, great. We're going to do this, this, and this. He's like, just, send the money. I literally sent a guy
from Instagram, thousands of dollars.
Oh no, not like $10,000. And my daughter was like, what the fuck are you doing?
What's wrong with you?
Yeah. And I was like, no, because how you just feel. And this is when I knew something was really huge happening to me, because it was like I became awake. It was like something inside me woke up. My eyes woke up, my soul. It was like this huge thing inside me. I couldn't control it. And I was like, no, this feels right. I'd never really felt something
so right
before. It wasn't my mind. It was
your soul.
Yeah. And it was like, you've got to do this. So without even thinking, I kind of wire this guy money. My daughter's like, you're going to be sold for sex slavery. And I was like, I'm like, wait, what? And I'm like, A, I'm too old to be sold for sex slavery in Eastern Europe. B, like, stop. And she's like, your plane's going to crash. And I'm like,
oh my gosh, she's just having all these fear scenarios. What was it like to go and have that trip?
So all this stuff had happened back and forth, and it almost didn't happen, didn't happen. Vaccines had come out. Iceland said
the COVID.
Oh, it was like all this series of events, and then it happened. And I remember it was very emotional. There was a woman on the trip that had a stroke. So she and I kind of came together. We were walking up glaciers, and I remember it was almost like touching heaven, like God. It was like so emotional for me. I was feeling all these feelings. I started writing on we had this like mini Mercedes van. I was writing, things were coming out of me, I was feeling all this stuff. I was having all these, what do you call them? Like visions and stuff. I was having visions before I even got to Iceland of things that were going to happen in Iceland that I thought, I was hearing things. Mm-hmm. I had visions about people I was going to meet there that, the black sand beaches. I didn't even think about that, but I was having visions of black sand beaches. It was insanity. And I thought I was going crazy. I really thought I was going crazy.
Like, you just got blown open and you're like, I don't know where to put this. Where do I put this in my neatly boxed file cabinet of experience, right?
I told a couple of my girlfriends what was happening, and they were like, yeah, okay, Chris. Yeah. And I said, no, there's something going on with me.
Happening here. Yeah.
And I didn't know what it was.
So how did you start to put the pieces together? Did you have a mentor, or did you just have to figure it out on your own, or did you start reading books that
I started kind of researching, and then started reading books, and then came back from Iceland, and then the shit got really weird, and I started sitting outside, and then a lot of things it was like I almost call them downloads, because at the time I didn't know how to.
You're getting downloads of information. It's like your higher self and your team is like, she's awake, and they just accelerated the process. They're like, we're just going to slam all this information in, just going to have all this knowing, and not know where it's coming from.
So I started walking one day, and when I was walking, it was like the shit was coming, and I just kept calling it downloads, because I would start walking and typing into my phone, but it all started rhyming, and I didn't know what it all meant. And I would just walk and type, and then I'd forget about it. And then I'd lay in bed, and I'd start seeing these shapes and these codes. And I'm like, what the hell does this all mean? And then I started seeing stuff about Africa, and I'd start hearing things about animals in Africa, and I'd start seeing visuals, and I'm thinking, why am I seeing this? And then I booked a trip to Africa, and then something happened with work and I had to cancel it. And then 3 weeks before I actually took off to Africa, I got an email saying, oh, we're looking forward to your trip to Africa. And I thought, well, I'm not going to Africa. And then literally I ended up 3 weeks booking, getting what do you call those things? Like a visa. I got like an electronic visa. I ended up taking off to Africa for 3 weeks.
For 3 weeks? Oh my!
I took off to Kenya, and I was in the bush. I was in with the Maasai warriors, the Maasai tribe.
Gosh,
And this was
how did it feel for you energetically to be in that energy and with the nature and animals and be energetically connected in the way you are? Like, that must have been incredible.
it was absolute insanity, because the downloads that I had in July, the end of June, July, and August were premonitions of what I got in September. And the irony was, I landed in Nairobi, Kenya, September 16th of 2021, a year to the day of my stroke.
Wow. I
So
feel like your stroke energetically did something. Like energetically, it aligned something. You know what I mean? Like something synapse or energetically was connected, like your higher heart, higher mind, or something happened there energetically, and it just launched you on this incredible journey, literally back to your soul.
that's actually, yes, because I wrote a piece on Imprinted in Iceland, and then I did Rekindled in Kenya, because when I was in Kenya, I became insanely quiet. Everything became very quiet for me. Like Iceland was very profound, and we did a lot of landscape photography, and it was wide open and just massive and beautiful. It was like I was touching heaven and God.
Mhm.
And then when I went to Africa, it was
Internal, like,
yes, it became
like
quiet.
came inside.
Yes. And I felt like I was retrieving puzzle pieces. And then since then it was like puzzle pieces, puzzle pieces, puzzle pieces. And then the earth and the plains of Africa, things would whisper. And I'd lay in my tent, because we were in the middle of the bush. So I was in a tent and no running water. So you'd hear the hippos at night, you'd hear lions, hyenas, and we'd drive around. And it was during the Great Migration. So, and these people I was with were the people I was with in Iceland.
You're kidding.
Yes. So it was the same company that I was with in Iceland.
That is
So
so cool.
yes. So it was kind of crazy. And the people I met on this trip, I ended up going further, and I went to Tanzania. I went to Kilimanjaro and spent some time in Amboseli. So I went a little bit further and spent another few days there.
What did you learn about yourself on that trip? What became, oh, what did you take away from that?
Honestly, I learned a lot from the Maasai tribe. I learned a lot of grace, a lot of being more patient. They taught me that that's when the unconditional love thing came up, honestly.
Wow.
And non-judgment, because when you arrive at their camp, they welcome everybody. They don't care what your title is, what kind of car you drive. They don't give a shit about anything. They just welcome you. There is no judgment, and their arms are wide open.
Soul to soul.
And that's the thing, when you get there and you get out of the truck and they welcome you, it's like they're the brightest, lightest people in the world.
Wow.
And you sit around a campfire with them, and the people of Wild Eye, and it's like it's just an amazing place. There's so much love in this one place, and the vibration, it's the weirdest thing. One of the the men from the company kept saying, my third eye's open, my third eye's open. And we would have these conversations in the safari.
Everybody's kind of being activated. It sounds like such a powerful, and you had to be with these specific people. I think you guys were all kind of going through something at the same time, like an
Yeah.
initiation of some kind and expansion of consciousness in this very silent way.
It's a special place.
I
felt like I had been there before. But I felt like I was also
as
retrieving.
a soul, and I feel like what you're talking about, the soul retrieval, is very prevalent right now on the planet, where we are retrieving fractals of ourselves, aspects of ourselves. We are integrating all of these things, all these parts of ourselves that were kind of scattered to the wind and becoming whole and complete. So what you're speaking to is very prevalent now for a lot of people, what they're going through in their human lives on planet right now, where they're actually literally doing soul retrieval work for themselves, whether it's on the astral or in a human experience on planet.
Yeah.
And very powerful. It's very powerful. And we can't unsee what we see, and we can't unknow what we know. So once you start experiencing these things, it takes a little time to really assimilate that with the human mind, because the human mind wants to analyze it and question it. But what you know deep in your soul, and that resonance and that truth has a frequency that can't be denied.
No, I can't.
Yeah. And then you went on to do a France retreat in 2023. And we fast forward, our beautiful friend, mutual friend Jen, has this France retreat. And you signed up for that. And tell me, and then what happened?
Well, that was another one I have to say. She did a live thing on her Instagram, and she was speaking about it. And then that was another one that said, nope, I got to do this.
Mm-hmm.
And literally I DM'd her and I was like, I'm going to do this. Let's do it. And I literally flew to Nice, and I met another girl on the plane. Same thing. We landed in Nice, beautiful morning. We went to Jen's boat. It was docked in Bondal Harbor. It was gorgeous, loved it. We went to the house that we were staying at, the Airbnb for the retreat. Everything was beautiful. We got up. I'm laughing about it now, but it was so not funny. We got up the next morning and Jen's like, let's go on a hike. Okay, great. All of us girls go down. We start going on the hike. I go to take a photo of this beautiful picture because I love taking photos. My foot goes under a root, snap. I go down, and I knew the instant it happened. I went, oh fuck. And all the girls turned around and said, are you okay, Chris? Are you okay? And I said, you guys got to back up. And I knew, and I didn't even want to look. I just knew. And my foot started swelling, and it was Easter in the south of France. And it just was not good. So I got taken by ambulance. There was a long story before that, but to a hospital that did not really speak a lot of English. So Google Translate was going on Easter, and Jen couldn't come with me. So it was a shit show, to say
another pivotal to the puzzle. You don't do these things in small ways. It's like these big, profound things happen. And what did you have to process when you came back with this broken foot? What did it trigger for you internally?
What did it not trigger is the word. What did it not trigger?
We're going to clear the entire cachet through this injury event.
Well, when I got back, I found out that the bone wasn't really set right. I had to get surgery. I had to get a plate, 6 screws.
Oh my gosh.
I lived alone. So I had to have help. That's not even in my vocabulary. Like, what do you mean I'm not self-sufficient?
Mm-hmm.
What do you mean I can't do this? I was in a wheelchair. I couldn't move.
Was your home wheelchair accessible? Like, how could you even
Oh,
get
oh,
upstairs or like
I
how did
didn't.
you do that?
I didn't. I sat on my sectional couch for probably, I don't know, almost 2 months
Oh my God.
because I couldn't do anything and I lived alone. I mean, my daughter had her own life.
Great.
So I cannot tell you, I think I cried more in those months than I did probably my entire life. It was the worst time of my life because I literally, and I'll say it, I contemplated suicide because
You were so alone and so deep in it.
in so deep in it. But I looking back, I feel it was like you're gonna sit down and you're gonna not move and you're gonna start looking at yourself and everything, and you're gonna shut the fuck up. And
You're
we're gonna shut everything up.
you're gonna feel what you need to feel because you can't move. You can't
Yeah.
it, kind of.
No. And your days are gonna look like nights, your nights are gonna look like nights, and you know, you're gonna have to deal with this one way or another. And you're not gonna because you go through periods where you can kind of things go wrong and you can kind of justify them and you can kind of get out and you go shopping and you can distract yourself somehow.
Mhm.
This was no, you're going to sit down, you're going to shut the fuck up and you're going to dance some ugly dances, the tango, the foxtrot, or just a slow dance with the ugliest pieces of yourself. And there's no getting out of it, Christy. There's no getting out of it. Like you can't move. And I look back and I think I'm actually grateful it happened because it needed to happen. It gave me insight into everything I've avoided my entire life. All the blame, the shame, the blame, the whose fault is it? This doesn't belong to me. This isn't mine. This is someone else's. Control, I
Fear,
need to,
fear,
yeah, the fear, the non-forgiving, the
all of it.
just so many emotions encapsulated in this couch that if that couch could talk downstairs, I'm telling you, it could write a book. It is, but
You know, what I think too is because I've also had a similar experience. It's so humbling to be stripped down so bare and so raw with yourself, especially for people like us who've had a very like a life where we have been on point,
mhm,
where you don't do vulnerability, you don't cry, you don't break down. Like that is something that I would never give myself the grace to do until
mhm,
the universe was like, you're going to sit down and cry for 4 months.
uh-huh.
And it's almost like, I don't know if you had this experience, but it's almost like someone who had a finger in the dam and they took your finger off. It's like I had been just barely holding it together in life. And all of a
Yeah,
sudden, one day I just started crying
and you
and
couldn't stop.
ugly crying. And then I couldn't stop crying for like months. Like, I was like, what is wrong with me? Like, I could not. It was like all of the emotions, repressed emotions of like 40 plus years, just like started to pour out. And I couldn't stop it. It just would not stop. It was unbelievable
Mhm.
to confront yourself like that.
And
It,
you get to the point where you don't even want it to stop because it starts to feel good once it's kind of like when you throw up, it's like, okay, I just got to get it out because I know it's going to feel better once I get it out.
Mhm.
And
But you
I,
also don't know how long it's going to last and it keeps going. And then I was like, oh my God, I'm never going to be happy again. I'm never going to, I guess this is my life. I'm just going to like cry for the rest of my life. It took for me like 8 months before I caught myself laughing. And I was like, oh my God, I just laughed. It was like 8 months of processing grief and
mhm.
deep stuff. And the first time I laughed, I was like, oh my God, I'm going to be okay. I didn't think I was going to ever come out of it. It was so
It
long. I'm sure you can relate to that too.
was
Just a
about 6 months. It was right about September.
long
It was
time
like,
to be
yeah.
processing all this repressed emotion, and so much comes out during that time. Like it's just so much.
But when you get that space, like when I realized I finally had space, it was almost like I looked down and I thought, I have space. I actually have space now. I, I don't feel like I'm in survival mode anymore. I don't feel that intense clenching of waking up in the morning and not being even grateful to be alive. Like I didn't have any gratitude. I didn't, it's like I was talking the talk, but not walking the walk. I kept saying, well, I'm a spiritual person. I've been on a spiritual journey for, since 2011. And I did all this talking, but I didn't do the walking
I think
piece.
a lot of people do that. It's kind of like the people who can quote all these
Yeah.
biblical quotes, but are they embodying the message?
No.
No, but they feel like because they memorized it all and they have all the right phrases and it looks a certain way that they're doing the work, but the work is so surface level. It's like
Yeah.
nothing compared to what you go through when you have these dark nights of the soul and you just are in the abyss of darkness for with yourself by yourself. Like I might not survive this. I literally might just die. I
Mhm.
might just die. I like you feel that bad. Like I might just die or I might just kill myself because this is so painful or whatever you're feeling. And nobody can save you except yourself when you're
Yeah. And your friends are like, why didn't you say something? I said, I didn't want to, but I shouldn't have because I needed to process all of this. It
without
was,
anyone else's projections and their shit mixed in with it,
yeah,
or
yeah.
judgment, whatever. It's the dark night of the soul is no joke. This journey back to ourselves and our soul sovereignty and our power and our awakening is no joke. It is not a beautiful sunset photo from a beach.
No,
Not
it's,
beautiful. It's ugly. It's crying in your closet. It's sobbing. It's processing anger. It's grief. It's so many things that we're not taught how to handle all at once. And somehow you come out the other side and you're like, "Whoo, that was something." Like I'm all of a sudden you're like, "Wow, I survived that," you know.
and not only that, you just think like, wow, I do love myself. I am worthy. Like, why the fuck did I put up with all that shit for so
Yeah,
long? Like, I just deprogrammed myself.
I know.
Wow. Like,
What's so incredible too is you start to find self-love and you start to boundary up and you start to be healthy and the best version of you, and everyone around you is pissed off
oh, you would,
because
yeah.
all they want is the old version of you that did too much at their own expense, that said yes when they wanted to say no, that gave and gave
Mhm.
until they were resentful. They want that version of you because that version served them well.
Oh, did it?
So you start to go through this incredible soul alchemy and you start to love yourself and feel worthy and you start living your best life and everyone around you is pissed off because that old version
Yep.
served this version serves yourself and they do not like it.
Yep.
I lost a lot of people in my life at that point.
Yeah. Yeah. You walk away from so much. I mean, I walked away from my corporate job. I mean, I walked away from a lot of things and they're like, are you on medicine? Like, are you
Are
okay? Are
you,
you depressed?
you okay?
Yeah. Like you just walked away from your corporate job. Yeah, I know. I know. I need freedom. I need space. I need to figure out me now. I need to, there's something more for me.
And you're still in the process of uncovering and growing because the
Oh,
process is eternal. Like, what's
yeah.
it been the last, 6 months for you? Now, fast forward to 2023. Like, so much has happened just from 2020 to 2023. Like, what are you learning about yourself now? And like, at what, where are you right now in your journey 3 years after that stroke experience and breaking
Where am I now?
good,
I've
all of
stepped into my soul sovereignty. I stepped into it. I now am aligned. It took me a lot to get here. I
it.
am I'm finally like I said to my girlfriend yesterday, I have so much love to give because my girlfriends are like, you're so different. You're so different. And I feel just so much space inside of me now that I don't have all this sludge anymore. I feel well, I see colors now. I I I hear music. Everything tastes better. I see so much that I never saw before. There's
You're so connected because you don't have the weight of all that stuff that you
no,
figured out holding you back. So you cut all of that ballast, and now you're able to rise vibrationally and connect in even more. And then there's even more and even more. It's like this infinite process of expansion, and it's beautiful.
yeah,
Every time you go to another level, you look around and you feel everything, and you're like, wow, I didn't even know this existed. And then you go to that next level, and you're like, wow,
yeah.
gosh, it's amazing how much we have to unpack, and that there's always a little deeper level and a deeper
Mhm.
level. And you just keep going, and your life changes. And
Oh,
it
it
changes because you change as you become so aligned with yourself and your soul.
yeah, there's definite non-negotiables. There's, and I'm
Mhm.
still learning about it. I listen more. I don't just hear. I listen. I watch people now. I used to, be so extroverted and, I'd go to parties and everyone would know who I am and I jibber jabber. And now no, I'm all set. Like I don't have that fear of missing out anymore. I have JOMO, I call it. Like I have the joy of missing out. Like you guys go have fun. I have JOMO now, not FOMO.
I'm good at that one. I'm just kind of reemerging myself back into interaction. I think there's something to be said about silence within ourselves and giving ourselves the grace of that,
Mhm.
because everything else is a distraction. It's so easy to avoid yourself and your truth and your lessons. And it's so easy now that we're outside of the COVID
Oh,
lockdown to fall back into those patterns of distraction and numbing or addiction of any kind, whether it's shopping or
anything.
socializing, whatever it is you use to avoid being alone with yourself. You got to take a look at those things, because it was only through our presence with ourselves that we were able to get to this place in our lives. And it's beautiful. It's a beautiful space. No one can take it from you because you're
Mhm.
so fully embodied within you, you know?
And I have to say, I write a lot now. I listen to what my body and soul is telling me. Like I'll hear, go outside, ground yourself, um,
Mhm.
sleep, eat. I don't just do things without purpose anymore. I don't. And I feel like I once I stepped out of, not that corporate jobs are bad. I'm not saying that, but once I stepped out of a rat race and not planning 12, 24 months ahead, I live in my moments now. I live in each moment, and I'm so grateful for that now that I have that opportunity. Do I know where I'm going yet? Not fully, but it's okay now, and I'm giving myself that grace now of saying don't get in that fear mode. I took that leap of faith
Mhm.
and I said, okay, the universe is going to have me. And people say, you're so crazy, you're so crazy. No, I'm actually not. This
I
is
agree. I agree with you. It's this knowing that you have got you. I know
yeah,
that I'm held. I know that I'm supported. I know that there are beautiful gifts that have been left for me by me along the way that I'm going
yeah.
to experience. And I don't have to ever live in a place of fear anymore.
No. No, and I don't anymore. After what I've just gone through, I won't. I won't. I
I've
can't.
done so many different levels of initiations to get to this place within yourself.
Hmm.
I think what happens is we just learn to trust ourselves through this process.
You
You
have
trust
to.
yourself because you got yourself here. And I can't tell you how many times something has wanted to creep in to create doubt. And I'm just like, no, I don't accept that. I
Yeah,
will
I'm
not
not.
participate in that because I know that I've got myself and I am going. to lock into my lane, and I'm going to fly and soar and
Mhm.
be all that I need to be in this life and in my
Yeah.
purpose. And no one can take that from you. No one. They can try to project their fears on you, but I reject it. I'm like, I don't need to take that. That's yours, not mine.
Mhm. Like, yeah, I did so much unpacking. I'm not taking anything on. No, I'm good now. I'm good. And I want to help people. Like, I definitely, when people talk about things now, I definitely want to help them, but I'm not absorbing it anymore.
Right.
I'm not taking it fully on.
And you
And
can have a boundary. It's
yes,
healthy.
definitely.
And it's healthy. And I honor your journey, Christy. I would love for you to share any words of wisdom before we wrap our podcast up that you might want to share with people who are tuning in today.
I just, my only words of wisdom is I just want to say, everybody's path is different. Like, I firmly believe it's like your fingerprint.
Mhm.
Don't compare what I'm doing or what you've done or what someone else is doing to what you may do. It's going to feel different. It's going to look different. And, there's so much information out there of what everyone's doing. And they're saying, stay in this lane, do this, do that. It's kind of like going to Trader Joe's for something, knowing you can go to another grocery store. Everybody's different. You're going to feel different. What you've gone through in your past lives different. What you're going through in your current life is different. It's going to feel different. It's going to look different. Your experiences of why you're here are different, and what you're to learn is going to be different. So you just got to feel it and experience and unpack what you're meant to unpack, and just go through what you're meant to, and then find guidance, and just live your life the way you're meant to live it, and just love yourself, but embody that love. Because I can say I talk shit for a long time saying this is this is that, and I would talk, but now I
You
feel
feel
it. That essence, that word essence means so much to me now.
it.
uh,
Mhm.
the feeling of something, and just don't take it for granted, because so much can happen. So the biggest thing is love yourself first and honor yourself, and you are worthy of love and everything that you deserve. So that's my words of wisdom.
Perfect. Perfect message to close on. So, Christy, it's been an honor, a pleasure,
Thank you.
a beautiful conversation. Thank you for being here with me.
Thank
And
you.
to my audience, thank you all for joining us on this beautiful journey. I want to let you know that you can now leave a voice message that I'd love to incorporate into the show. So I will put a link for you to leave a voice message, share what you've learned, tips that you've learned along the way in your journey, or what you've, received from listening to the podcast. I've had my 5-year anniversary. To those of you who've been with me, thank you, thank you, thank you. I love you all. And remember, we're a community, and I'd love to interact more with you. So reach out, email, leave a voice message on social media or on the links that I'm going to include in the show text. And have a beautiful day. Don't forget to love yourselves. I'll see you next time. Bye.